Today we're going to be talking about the Silicon Valley Bank and how I think it's going to affect Canada in a good or bad way. And, I read about this about a week ago, right? I wanted to make a video on it and then I'll just like forget it. It's very funny, right? Because this happened on Friday. Supposedly it happened on Friday. And it's almost like they planned everything, right? I mean, it happened on Friday, and by the time it's Monday, everything was done, said and done, right? It's like right over the weekend and everything. And it's not only Silicon Valley Bank. There's another bank, so there's two banks that collapsed. Now, you're probably wondering why would this matter, like in Canada? Because the thing is, we're not the United States, and I gotta say this: a lot of people are confused that we're in the U.S., and you could tell from the tipping culture thing in Canada, right? I mean, the British isn't confused, right? And I think the HSBC had to buy the arm of Silicon Valley Bank in the UK, right? So that happened as well. But anyways, like I was saying, I mean, people in English, I mean England, my bad. People in England uh, aren't confused that they're not Americans, right? They know they're not Americans, but Canadians are somehow more likely to be confused, right? That's just how it is, unfortunately. Maybe because we're right beside the U.S. But essentially speaking, if you have a Canadian passport, right, they're not gonna look at you as American. Anyway, so we're confused, and I gotta say that Silicon Valley Bank really kind of feels like 2008, or actually before 2008, because you know how they started raising interest rate last year, right? And places started to collapse. The crypto stuff started to go down. A lot of other stocks went down. Um, what else? Real estate, one of the most solid investments that I would say is going down, but it's not going down in the terms of hey, the value of it is going down. The thing is, people are having to sell because their mortgages doubled, right? Some of them borrowed like $2,000, now it's like $4,000, and they couldn't support it. But of course, there's millions of other people that isn't selling. You see, that's the thing. That's the difference, right? There are people selling, but there's also millions of other people that aren't selling. I'd say that there's only 10% of people selling. But anyways, so places started to collapse, and it was only a matter of time until this bank collapsed or any other bank, and then we run into a financial crisis. And even though Canada and the US are different countries, the problem with Canada is we follow the US way too much, and anything that happens in the US will happen to Canada. That's why we always do everything in benefits of the United States. Unfortunately, it doesn't benefit Canadians, but it benefits the United States. And looking at how it is, you gotta see that it's very different from 2008. In 2008, yes, they were raising interest rates, or actually before 2008, my bad. So they were raising interest rates and everything else, right? So when the thing happened, they dropped interest rate. So looking at it today, like we are supposedly trying to fight inflation. You see, inflation never happened in 2008. Remember that. It didn't exist. And not just that. I mean, we were still good with China. Now we have a West versus East situation, and China is pretty much like, you know what? I don't really care about you guys anymore. So if something falls, that's your problem, and we're just going to keep our stuff selling to our own people. And yeah, I mean, some people, whether you believe how it's going to unfold is kind of irrelevant because in the end, what's going to happen is you got to think if basically you can survive economically. But anyways, so uh back then it was relatively different compared to today. Today it's like, we had the highest inflation in 40 years. I wasn't even alive back then, right? So there's that. And, or higher than 40 years. So basically half of our generation haven't seen increasing price like this. And it's incredible because now, right, before at least they could drop interest rate, right? But now if they drop interest rate, what does that mean? Because they said they were going to fight inflation. So you can't do two things at once, right? Because if you drop interest rate, that means inflation is going to skyrocket. I've already said the prices have been really expensive, and I actually stopped buying stuff. My internet price increased 2 times over the past 2 years, right? And you have like all these Marvel toys, and of course, you have new technology coming in trying to lower the price, but inflation just going up. Imagine everything just remains stable, right? The prices would just skyrocket even higher, because if you didn't have new technology automating everything, of course, there's always Facebook. You see Facebook where they started firing people. I heard not too long ago what happened was Facebook was hiring a bunch of people, not because they needed them, but they needed their skills to be outside of the industry. So it's almost like you hired the thieves so they can't steal, right? Or you hire these smart people so they can't steal your business. So anyways, they've been hiring a bunch of people, and the people don't work, right? They're like literally like, we have to fight for work. There's nothing to do here, but we're getting paid. And that's because of ultra low interest rate, right? And basically that has been coming to an end. And Facebook has been firing people. Google has been firing people. What do you call it? YouTube. Actually, Google and YouTube are the same. Twitter, yes. That's the other one I was thinking about. Twitter. But anyways, so how does this affect Canada? You see, the thing is, in 2008, there wasn't inflation, right? That means that it's pretty much, Canada is going to go through the same thing as the United States. I think what's going to happen is we're going to drop interest rate when the U.S. drops interest rate. And when they drop interest rate, that means our inflation will actually go up as well. So that's very interesting. Now, the thing that I do care about the most is real estate. And I want to talk about how detached real estate is going to maintain a better living standard, better life than all these condo apartments, condo townhouses, and put a condo in front of it, right? These condo stuff are going to get sold left and right, and they're going to be like a hot potato. That's what I think. And the reason for that, and it makes sense, right? I mean, I love things that make sense. You see, when they talk about inflation, they're talking about rising prices nowadays, but I don't even think about inflation as rising prices. I think of it as a expansion of the money supply. So the money supply has been expanded. Now people need to raise the price, right? So anyways, so the rising price is going to continue because they're going to drop interest rate. That means that your condo fee is going to skyrocket. I mean, if it hasn't already skyrocketed, it's because the condo corporation, what happened is they take more money than they actually use, right? Let's say they use only $100. And what happened is that they charge you $500. So, the saving pool that they have is there, right? But if it, like, let's say 5 years later, that's different. That saving pool is going to start dwindling. And what they're going to have to do is, now your $5,000, your $500 condo fee is going to go to $1,000, depending on the inflation rate. I mean, if the inflation rate is higher, you could be paying a $2,000 condo fee. You don't know that. I mean, back in the day, right? I mean, condo fee was $35. What is it now? I mean, some of them are $500, some of them are $800, some of them are $1,000, right? Depending on how big your condo is and everything. So, the condos, I think those are going to be very bad investments in this environment, because in the past 12 years, it has been a hot commodity, because you get all of these maintenance fee. You don't have to do anything. They maintain it for you. You have concierge and all these other stuff. But that's only because inflation didn't exist. That's one thing. Second thing, the prices of assets were going up. That's another. And now we have inflation and an ultra low interest rate. Now that we have inflation, and they're stuck into a situation that if they continue to raise interest rate, places are going to go bankrupt, right? I mean, right now it's just crashing. It's not going bankrupt yet. But imagine holding a condo during that time when there's high inflation and you don't even know where it's going to go, right? I mean, I've seen some of these for the past 5 years, think about it this way. Games, PlayStation games used to be $59.99. It's been stable for relatively long until 2014, right? Then, how much are the PlayStation game now? $89.99, $79.99, nothing lower than that. And how much is a PlayStation controller? I mean, it used to be $39.99. That's how much I bought them for, right? You bought a console for about $500, and then you bought the control for about $39.99. Now the console is about $600-$700, and then the controller is about $100. And you're sitting there wondering, whoa, that makes no sense. I mean, the controller didn't even change that much. If you look at it, it has pretty much the same design. But anyways, so talking about how this bank is just signaling that there's going to be a major financial crisis, and I don't know when. We might be in the 2006 of the 2008. So what is this, 2023? We might be having a financial crisis by next year, right? 2024, or maybe by 2023, at the end of 2023, or maybe 2025, right? But it looks like they're gonna, they're trying to figure out if they should continue to raise the interest rate or drop it, or just leave it as it is and see what happens. Because as I can see now, right, Silicon Valley Bank, right, we've been raising the interest rate, and we're already it was already overboard. That means we have to drop it by quite a bit, right? Or the entire world is going to have to drop it by quite a bit to actually kind of sustain this thing. So, a lot of bad things that are happening, and I think it will affect Canada. There's no way that it won't affect Canada. In 2008, a lot of people have been saying, oh, Canadian banks are resilient and all that other shit. Well, houses, not a lot of, we didn't have a housing crisis back then, right? We did not having a housing crisis back then, and today we have a housing crisis. And most of the people, as far as I know, I'm around the millennial age, and most of the people bought their house on a mortgage. They didn't pay it outright. How many people do you think they paid it outright? Not many. And, they have a doubled mortgage, and then most of the people that are my age, millennials, bought a condo. I know that people are saying, why did you guys buy a condo? I live in Toronto, man. You can't buy houses unless you have $5 million or at least $1 million, right? I mean, nowadays, even a condo is almost $1 million. It's about $700,000-$800,000. So, most of the people that bought these places are going to run into hardship because as a detached, let's say a detached, which we don't own, most of the millennials don't own a detached. What happened is with a detached is you don't need to pay a condo fee, right? Let's say this. You bought a house and your mortgage was $2,000. Now it's $4,000 because you're dumb enough to go on a variable rate. And then, right, now you have a condo fee that was $35, and I'm just lying. It's not 35. I mean, the starting price is at least $300, all right? But I'm trying to make examples. So let's say it was at $35, and now you need to pay an extra $500, right? Then obviously the price is, it's like your mortgage combined with the condo fee is gonna force those people to sell. Okay, and obviously we're gonna head into a sort of downturn. Depending on market, I think in major cities, it's not going to be hit as hard because most of the major cities, first of all, depending on who's buying it, right? I know that people like to say that international buyers buy it with cash and everything, and that's also one of the reasons I believe that major cities are not going to drop as much because most of the people outside of the major cities are literally on loans. And I got to say this, before they had the foreign ban, right? The foreign buyers would buy it with cash, and they don't want to buy it in any smaller, unknown city, all right? As much as people around Canada want to tout, there's a great place in, freaking Alberta, there's a great place in Manitoba, there's a great place in Saskatchewan. First of all, you have to have a reality check, and that is you got to associate yourself with the world, right? The world, literally the entire world, globally. So the truth is, if you go outside of Canada, outside of whatever, most people won't know a lot of these cities that are outside of Toronto. That's one thing. Second thing is Vancouver, right? Those are the two major cities, which is why real estate prices are high because everyone in the entire freaking world knows where those two cities are. And that's because it's the same thing as this. People will know New York is in the United States, right? But they may not know where the freak, like this little city in Texas is, right? I mean, as much as you know that this place is great when you're in the country, but compared to people outside the country, which is a lot more people, they won't know. Unfortunately, that's just how it is. And you have to view it as the world views it because your view is skewed, right? I mean, you need to view it as millions and billions of people. You can't view it as a few million peoples because obviously billions of people are going to overshadow your couple of million, right? That's just how it works, unfortunately, you know? And Toronto and Vancouver, I feel the prices are not going to drop as much. I mean, it will stabilize, or like, there might be a people that would be forced to sell if they don't have enough cash and everything. And, as we head into a financial crisis, I think that Canada won't get away like it did before. Because before, nobody knew where the hell Canada was. And they didn't really care about Canada, right? They didn't care about it that much in 2008. And then all of a sudden, when the U.S. collapsed, somehow Canada was like unscathed, right? So people have been looking for a more stabilized place, and that's why real estate prices have been going up as well. That's one of the reasons, but not all the reasons, because people look at Canada, oh, it's a stable place. You see what happened in 2008, and then they pile in, and there's your problem. What was known before is not the same to what wasn't known before isn't the same as today. We are like, most people know like one of the most expensive places in the world, or top 10 expensive places are in Toronto and Vancouver now. I mean, before it wasn't, right? So they started looking at Canada, and I guess over the past 12, 15 years, uh, things have been accumulating. And you cannot pretty much say, hey, it's the same, nothing happened in 2008. That means nothing is going to happen in 2023 or whatever the next financial crisis, or Canada is really strong. Now that is a very short-sighted thing, because the Canada of today is definitely not the Canada of 2008. And like I was saying, one of the things that you could go back to is like QE, right? I mean, the world wasn't on QE, the US wasn't on QE, and they didn't do money printing that much back then. But today is different. Like, we've been doing it for so long. Don't forget about the inflation, right? I mean, or the rising prices. Prices didn't rise back then. Well, now it has been rising for the past 15 years. So it's very different, and you can't do that comparison. And if you try to do that comparison, I think you're uneducated. But anyways, so essentially that's what I think what will happen. Well, other things will happen, the bankruptcies, the layoffs, I think that those will increase. But the main thing I wanted to talk about is real estate, actually. And this bank collapse in the U.S. is just signaling that the rates are too high already. It's completely too high. And right now, as I know it, there's no Canadian-only banks or Canadian-only businesses that have shut down. Any major ones, anyways. I mean, the mom and pop stores, they have been closing like left and right since COVID, right? But so far, isn't any major Canadian ones. And when I see the major Canadian ones going down, that's when I say, oh, we've hit the flip fan, right? I mean, right now it's just the U.S. because they are the biggest debtor in the world. So that's what's happening first. But I am definitely keeping an eye out for Canada. And of course, I want to say that, don't forget, once they start dropping interest rate, that means inflation will go higher, which means should help real estate, right? I mean, real estate is a great inflation hedge, especially detached houses, right? Because there's no maintenance fee. You don't have to worry about that crap. And second thing, like, yeah, you always need a shelter over your house. If not, I mean, over your head. If not you, somebody else, right? And you can always rent that out. And that's if you have money. That is a great hedge. Now, other people that don't have money, well, you know, you're just gonna get poorer. I seen a lot of people living on the streets. I seen them set up tent in the near the mall on the grass, and I'm like sitting there, wow, this is pretty sad, and it's actually getting pretty scarier out there in Canada or Toronto rather, because people, yeah, I mean a lot of them are still good people, but everybody's stressed out, and I think that everything else is just gonna get worse, right? It's not gonna get better, and I think by the time it gets better, I'm probably gonna be dead already. And unfortunately, that's just how it is, right? I see this thing playing out, and if you watch the other people that have been talking about it for many years, you will know how serious the situation is. And yes, Canada is not the United States, but unfortunately, we aligned ourselves to be following pretty much everything, right, of the U.S. If you think about COVID, and I know that people don't talk about COVID that much anymore, but if you remember what happened in COVID, they were saying that, oh, everything is fine, there's no COVID here, and then all of a sudden US and Canada shut down immediately. That can't be a coincidence. They probably talked about it for many weeks, right? And then they coordinated that. It's not like, oh, all of a sudden the US shuts down and then the Canadian government was like, oh, let's shut down too. It can't be. It couldn't be. It's impossible. Even with the vaccine and everything else, it looked like they were all in discussion. I mean, I don't know if they actually told us that, but I'm just viewing it from actually a citizen, and obviously anybody with a brain would know that, hey, um, we're pretty much following the U.S. And if the U.S. heads down, that means we're gonna go down too, and we're gonna try to support it. But will the U.S. go down like really badly? I don't know. I mean, as I know it, 2008 was supposed to be bad, and apparently anything else after 2008 is going to be worse because the thing before 2008 was bad, right? And then what happened was 2008 was worse than 2000, and then 2000 was worse than whatever, right? So it always gets worse. So think about that and prepare yourself.